Hello, my name is Oliver Thompson, and I am looking at Enter the Gungeon, specifically the room size to enemy spawn ratio. And if you look over here, I have on the right hand side, I've ranked each of the enemies based on their difficulty. So a simple bullet is 1, red shotgun is 2, the blue one was 2, and then so as you go through here, you'll see that change as time goes on. And I've logged the room size in the upper right hand corner. I'm looking at the number of walkable tiles in the room, so I'm subtracting out like those pillars in the middle, and that will affect the room size. And then I'm keeping track of the wave, that's kind of more just for user information than anything. And I'm looking at the total enemy difficulty there right below that, and then the size to difficulty ratio. I'm taking the room size is 261 right now, and the enemy difficulty is 3, so I'm taking that 261 dividing it by 3, and the lower that number goes, that represents a larger, the lower that number goes, the more difficult the room is. So it doesn't necessarily mean the enemies are tough, but the room itself will be challenging. So here is a pretty low one. This is kind of in the middle range. 76 to 100 is about average. So here we actually have the toughest room in the entire dungeon so far. These are all procedurally generated, so I just wanted to examine how they decided what was a tough room, what was an easy room. This is 53 right now. You've got kind of an open area that's not huge, and it has a really difficult enemy along with those 2 grenades at the start that kind of up the difficulty level of the room. So as you see me going around there, I just destroyed that enemy. Here's a tight quarters room. It doesn't have it has 2 very weak enemies, but because of that small room size, you're seeing that the ratio was actually really low. It was in the 68 there. Anything below 75 is usually pretty difficult. So this is over 100. That means it's pretty easy. It's big, wide open spaces, not very difficult enemies. If you actually see right here, the second wave spawned while this first wave was still in the room, and that dropped the ratio all the way down to 61. That's just the value of the 3 that spawned in. That's not including the ones that hung over from the previous wave. I just wanted to do that to kind of keep the mass separate. This is a pretty difficult enemy, again in tight confined quarters, so that dropped this ratio down to 59. That means it's a pretty tough room. That's one of the toughest in the dungeon. And I was actually really surprised something spawned here, but it was just a weak little one-shot thing. So that wasn't too difficult. Again, another big open room here. These are in the order that I played them in. I'm just cutting out the time walking between rooms, but you got some pretty standard enemies in a big open room, so it's not very tough. But you'll see here, once I finish off these 2 shotguns, which I have a rank of 2 on, after I finish those off, you get this new wave spawn in, and the difficulty ratio actually halves. It's still pretty easy, just because the room's so big, and you'll see there's a lot of enemies around here, but just the wide open spaces just lets me keep running around. So we're kind of getting this wave action of tough rooms and easy rooms. Alright, so this room, we got to see some new enemies. That was a nice thing. Every time the difficulty dropped, it was either a new style of room or a new style of enemy. So here you have a fairly larger room and 2 different kinds of enemies that hadn't been seen before yet. The mage and those red books are pretty on the harder side. Again, we're kind of repeating this smaller room with two pretty weak enemies, but it's pretty average difficulty level from what I found. And then here's the final room of the dungeon. It's a pretty tough one, and we had those spawners, and then we had that Tommy gun ghost. And then we'll actually see here, I graphed out the room size, and at those low points, that's where it's difficult, and at the high points, that's where it's easy. You have this nice wave action. You can see the flow of the game. And that's everything. Thank you.